Hey everyone, this is Dane from Aspire. I hope you've had a wonderful holiday break and you're ready to get back into it this semester. We're really excited to start the program with you, and we're going to do so through the use of 2 week cycles. So we're going to have three 2 week cycles, which I'm going to explain right now in this video. So you should have been shared a folder, a personal folder. I have a generic one open right now. These are the templates. But essentially, once you have the folder, you should be able to see our plan for the 2 week cycles, and then two worksheets. One, the beginnings / writing to learn worksheet, and number two, a lesson plan. Best place to start out here is these 2 week cycles. This will give you all the information of what we're doing. So for the first 6 weeks of this program, we're going to be doing these 2 week cycles. So as you can see, cycle one is going to focus on the beginning of class and a strategy we called write to learn. This first week, so between Monday and January 13th, you have two things to do: fill out the strategy worksheet and fill out the lesson plan. The following week, you're going to teach the lesson that you planned. You're going to fill out a reflection worksheet and upload a Go React video. We'll have information on this stuff this second week next week. For right now, let's focus on the first two steps, the first week of this cycle. So the first thing I want you to do in your folder is go to the strategy worksheet. The strategy worksheet looks like this. It's the beginning / writing to learn worksheet. And you can see this is cycle one, week one, the beginning of lessons in the writing to learn worksheet. So you can see we have a bunch of resources right here. So video from Dane, that's what I'm recording right now. I'll link to that after I get the video done and upload it to YouTube. But this is the video that you're listening to me talk about right now. Then the next resource, we have some resources on the start of lessons. So what are some best practices for the start of your lesson? And by lesson, if you're in secondary, that probably means like your class, right? That could be your lesson. If you're elementary, it may be like a reading lesson or specials or some sort of a lesson. Like it doesn't have to be the whole day. If you're an elementary school teacher, it's just focusing on one lesson. So if you're an elementary school teacher, focus on that one lesson. If you're secondary, focus on like one class. That's pretty much what we mean by a lesson. So things to consider during the first few minutes of your lesson: how do you launch the lesson and get students interested in the day's learning? How will you connect to students' interests and knowledge they bring from their home lives and their own lives? And how can you make the first few minutes fun and engaging? How can you make the first few minutes thought-provoking? We've got some of our greatest hits here from some YouTubes in the teaching channel, Edutopia, some other blogs, stuff like that. These are some cool ideas to hopefully get you thinking. We'd like for you to kind of cruise through those, see if any cool ideas spring up. You don't have to look at all of those, but just kind of cruise through and get some ideas. Then we have a video about writing to learn. This is by one of our other allies named Sam. He kind of walks through an example of what writing to learn looks like. And you'll notice that the way Sam does it, it could be a really good beginning of a lesson. So that's kind of why we've tied writing to learn with the beginning of the lesson. We want you to try out both, like really focus on making the beginning of your lesson engaging and productive for your students. We see writing to learn as a strategy to do that. That said, if you don't want to use writing to learn as your strategy to kick off the lesson, that's fine, but we would like you to try out writing to learn at some point in the lesson. So the easiest approach might be to use the writing to learn strategy that we're talking about to be your launch or your hook or your beginning of your lessons. But again, if you have a different approach where you can use writing to learn later in the lesson, you want to try something else on at the beginning, that's perfectly fine. But we do want you to try out really focusing on the beginnings and trying out writing to learn somewhere in this lesson. So the writing to learn video, that's Sam walking through that. Origins of writing to learn. This is a more academic article about where did writing to learn come from? What is it? Why do education theorists think it's worthwhile? And then there's another article about writing to learn versus learning to write. So we really we don't want this to be like a super like academic heavy writing task. Writing to learn is sort of quick, low stakes, gets kids' thoughts out there versus learning to write. So this is sort of a comparison if you're still confused about that. But we do want to focus more on this write to learn strategies as opposed to learning to write. Cool. So once you've cruised through all of these resources, you head down and just answer some of these questions. It's about like the beginning of lessons, what do you need to accomplish, and then some questions about how writing to learn might fit into the lesson, hopefully at the beginning. But if not at the beginning, where could it fit into your lesson? So just answer those questions. Once you're done filling out this worksheet, The next step is to move to number 2, lesson plan, which should be in your Google folder. So coming back to my Google folder, 2-week cycles is where we started. That's the overview. The worksheet was what we just walked through. So let's go to the lesson plan. This is a lesson plan template we really like. We've got a lot of resources embedded in it. Later on in the program, we might release you to use a different template if you already use one. But for these 2-week cycles, let's please use this template. It's fine to copy and paste it from a different template that you have. But we would like you using this template just for these first 6 weeks at least to sort of get you in the mindset of doing the things that we think is best practice, one specific way to do it. So as you see, we want you to list the standard. Most lessons probably come from one standard, but there could be an argument that a couple standards might be covered. We've linked to the Colorado Academic Standards, as well as Common Core and Next Generation Science Standards. If you have a different standard that you use, you can definitely use that as well. But just give us some context here about what you're using and why. Then what's the essential question for the lesson? This could actually be the question that students respond to as their right to learn activity. It doesn't have to be, but it certainly could be. You could click here for more support on that. What's the learning objective? What are the language demands? Try your best here. We haven't covered a lot of this, but I'd really like you to give this a shot of, linguistically, what are kids being asked to do? Are they reading, writing, speaking, listening? Is it like compare, contrast, cause, effect, describe, analyze, persuade, something else? What vocabulary might be important? Don't worry about brick and mortar. We'll cover that later in the program unless you're already familiar with that thinking. So this is sort of the big general information for the lessons, the standards, objectives, essential questions. Now, what's the lesson actually going to be? We're really paying close attention here in this specific activity to the beginning, right? We really want you honed in on how can you make that beginning smooth? How can you make it productive? How can you make it engaging and really spark students' thinking at the beginning? What are you going to be doing? Teacher actions. What are the students going to be doing? Student actions. Roughly how much time is required for that? So Leslie and I are really going to dig in here because that's sort of the focus of this. We would like to see a right to learn there if it works. If not, please introduce our right to learn later in the lesson. Even though we are just concerned about the beginnings, we would like to see the whole lesson. So after your beginning, what happens next in terms of what you're doing, students doing, blah, 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 moving forward. Also put those time required in there. And if you're doing a writing to learn, maybe down in here somewhere, just make that obvious to us. And then at the end, closing, how are you going to close the class? What's that going to look like and what's the time required? Then we have some questions about assessment and differentiation. We have some questions about the resources you've selected and why you've selected to use the resource. And then we also have a checklist for strategies that are good to show up in lessons. Don't feel like you need to use all these strategies. Don't feel like you need to spend a ton of time on this. Plan this to the level you normally plan your lessons. We kind of want to see where you're at. And so at the end of this week, again, I'm going to go back to the overview of the 2-week cycles. At the end of this week, due January 13th, that is next Sunday, January 13th, we need to see the strategy worksheet, and it's got it looks right here, the beginnings writing to learn worksheet, and we need to see the lesson plan. That's what's due by January 13th. We can access the folders so we can see it, but if you're done, when you finish the lesson plan and the worksheet, if you wouldn't mind just shooting me an email, just saying, hey, I'm done, you can go give it a look, that would be great. That would be awesome because then we know it's there, we know we can get into it. And then just a quick look to next week. Again, we'll send out another video, more information next Sunday. But by January 20th, you need to teach the lesson that you planned. You need to reflect on it in a worksheet that looks like this, which I'll probably have added to your folders. Just a real quick reflection. And then the biggest lift is to film a video and upload it to GoReact. Again, we'll provide more information on how to do that next Sunday. I don't want to overwhelm you at this point, but that will be your first video. So you'll be recording whatever you planned this week. You'll teach that next week and upload a video and reflect upon it. Cool. So again, for this week, you're going to work on the strategy worksheet and the lesson plan. That's due by January 13th. You can go ahead and fill it out, leave it in your folder. But when you're done, if you'd like to email us, just to let us know, that would be awesome. Cool. Please reach out with any questions or concerns that you might have. I'm really excited to get started this semester. Thanks so much. Bye.